Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the king of podcasts.
You know I'm going to talk about this. There's nothing else to talk about but Will Smith, Chris Rock, Jada Pinkett, and the whole Slapgate story from the Oscars from Sunday. So, we already know Chris Rock is going on with a monologue. He's roasting celebrities. He did the same thing with Will and Jada when they decided to be absent because of the lack of black representation in the Oscars in 2016, and he made a joke about both of them then. They worked with each other on various projects. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And all that Will Smith had to do was wait a couple of hours. Listen, we already know that there have been some people that have had some confrontations on set, live when it happened. That happens. I still think of Burt Reynolds and Mark Summers when Burt Reynolds was just miffed at Mark Summers. But these guys basically just had a tete-a-tete where, they were throwing water at each other, right? And throwing stuff at each other. But it was, the two didn't get along with each other, but at least it was something that might have been a little bit uncomfortable for TV, but it was not violent. This was violent. And for all the work that Will Smith and Chris Rock have done, listen, I'm not even going to talk about the whole black representation and the black community being up in arms and how they're supposed to feel about this. These are two grown men. Of course, I'm going to be of the opinion that Chris Rock was a complete professional. He handled it as best as he could. And that guy was getting paid that night, so he did what he had to do. He kept going and found the best way to really get himself feeling composed again so he could continue to do the rest of the show that night after such a disruption. As for Will Smith, the best night of his career, finally grabbing that Oscar year after year after year, with putting out a number of movies that he thought would be the one. King Richard is the one. He makes this portrayal of Richard Williams, the father of the Williams sisters. This movie gets critically acclaimed. He gets the Oscar Best Actor. He's been working forever for this. He's taken some pretty tough roles for him in order to do that. 7 pounds, concussion. He's worked hard. I give him credit. And he wanted to be respected as an actor. Well, we already respect him as an actor. Anytime he puts on a movie, we're going to watch it. Pretty much, where we are. And that's where we've always been. I mean, there's a number of movies I could tell you that I always thought were great of his. I'll tell you, one of my favorite movies of his, Enemy of the State with Gene Hackman. And remember, who's in that cast right there? I mean, it was all these younger stars of famous names, And I'm saying to myself, man, there was such a good setup right there. And such a good cast. What a good movie. John Voight, Lisa Bonet. I mean, it was really a solid cast all around and a great movie. And I could watch that over and over. Oh, Regina King, of course. That was a great movie. And Independence Day, that's the blockbuster. He's best known for it. And of course, Men in Black. And of course, pick other movies. And of course, he's had his bomb, Wild Wild West. But he's done much better than not. The Legend of Bagger Vance. Like, we could go through the movies he's done that have been so popular. 6 Degrees of Separation. He's done a lot. To go from a kind of a friendly rapper, not the hardcore rap that was going on to the day of the NWA and Tupac and all this kind of thing. Like, it was a different time. But he stood out. He was one of those first mainstream friendly rappers. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. We got Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And just continuing on. And knowing the public relationship that him and Jada Pinkett had, or Jada Pinkett-Smith for all this time, his son and daughter in the limelight now, even as much. All of that. And after what was going on, if you could have held on for a couple of hours and not let that joke, first of all, not react to the joke where Jada Pinkett needed to go ahead and give him a look to do something about it, which is what happened, and for him to actually go ahead and do something on the night that was the most important in the history of his movie or acting career. This was more important than anything he ever did. This was the night of his life. This was the pinnacle of his achievement in Hollywood. This was it. The Best Actor Oscar. One of 5 black men to have won the award. There's not a lot of them. Denzel Washington, Sidney Poitier, among others, that get to have this award. And I think Mahershala Ali, correct? I forget who else. But it's rarefied air for him. He finally was going to get recognized for his work after all this time. After getting nominated and snubbed, he finally got it this time. I thought it was great in Concussion. It was a great movie. He's done the work. He has applied his craft. And in one moment of an error in judgment, a crucial error, not so much the fact that he slapped Chris Rock in the face. I would have almost accepted that if it was just he did it, walked right back, and that was it. He had to yell from a feminine position, "Keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth." He had to say it twice. There was no reason to go that far. I think everybody, of course we would have had a controversy because of the slap anyway. But I think even if he just went ahead, did the slap, walked back, I think I would have been fine with that. I could see that and okay. But he had to keep going. And people are almost getting canceled because they're commenting about this. When this kind of thing happens, now we know where cancel culture and the sensitivity of our generation now as a society. Now we know how everybody is. It's so soft. Man, if this was years ago, it's like whatever. And the Academy's going to go talk about this. They're all going to go and complain about this. I shouldn't be doing a broadcaster's podcast about it. But of course I'm going to cover mainstream stories like this because there's a lesson to be told about this. What's happening is, this is what Hollywood does to you. The corruption, the push, the effort you have to make yourself, the people that you're brought into your web, and the pressure put upon by your family, by your wife, by everybody in Hollywood, your agents, the producers, everybody that has a stake in you. And we've seen him in various emotions where he's just not himself. He's not Mike Lowry of Bad Boys. No. Something's not right there with him. We know that he went and did a psychedelic journey to Peru. And he talked about it in his book where he opened himself up to whatever he went through. And to think he's got great role models. Denzel Washington, what a great role model. What an amazing actor. I'm telling you, every time I see a movie that's coming out with him, I'm watching it. The only thing I haven't watched as of lately was Roman Israel Esquire. I meant to see that, but I don't know. Something happened, and it just never happened. But anyways, no matter what, Will Smith, Chris Rock had a relationship. They knew each other. They're both in the same circles. Equally as talented, I would say, in different ways. I mean, Chris Rock, I don't think he's going to win an Oscar for his acting. But he could win a Grammy for his work in comedy. He could win an Emmy for his TV show, which I believe he did. They both are equally successful role models in terms of work ethic, success, determination, entrepreneurship, making something of themselves. They did that individually. And that has nothing to do with color skin. I don't think it is. But of course, it's going to be made that such. But I respect the fact that they are from the black community. And I also respect that they are part of a community that is disenfranchised. Not, even though there might be a level of representation that's 13% of the whole country. Of course, there's this push that there should be more overrepresentation of the black community in everything. Okay. If that's what you want, sure. But I think there's other races, creeds, cultures that don't care. I don't think it's that important to them. The Spanish community, I don't think it doesn't really matter. The Hispanic community, I don't think really makes a big deal out of it. But we get this here, and we see this moment, And when you are trying to be a content creator, whatever size, whatever scale, whatever kind of magnitude of popularity that you get, that stardom, it comes with a price. It comes with a pressure. And it comes with a potential of a breakdown. We've seen breakdowns with many celebrities. This is nothing new. Mel Gibson, Britney Spears. I mean, we see it. Tiger Woods. There's just all these there's all these people that go through and they just fall apart. And for this to have happened at the pinnacle of Will Smith's career, he doesn't have to do another movie again. He has accomplished everything he could have won. He could have said after this reward, you know what? I'm going to retire from acting. I'm going to stop. I'm going to produce and direct and do other projects. I'm going to work with Jada, work on our production stuff, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on my own shows, which he's done. So he could have done that, and he could have just, said, okay, that's it. But now he's going to be remembered on the night he wins the Best Actor award in a drama for King Richard. He's going to have won that award. He will not be remembered that night. It's an afterthought now. It's an afterthought. The slap heard around the world on global television, which people probably didn't watch so much of, but they heard about it later on, and they saw the clip everywhere on social media. You couldn't get away from it. Immediate reaction from everybody. It's been so long since I see a reaction like that from everyone. The TikTok feed, the reaction of people now talking about it on television. You can't get away from it. People can't stop talking about it. It's been 5 days. And we're still here talking about it. I mean, I might as well. I mean, I could have found something else to talk about, but I'm not. This is such an important story. It's the matter of, it's the composure. It's the prestige of being at this high a level and knowing what to do to keep yourself grounded so that you don't let yourself break down. Because there is so much pressure at that level of stardom. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody who can recognize you. You get older, you still look like Will Smith. You're still very much active in a lot of different projects. A lot of acting roles. And you have your family all in the family. It's a real life reality show. Not Kardashians. This is real life. The red table talk, we heard that. All the other things that has been said that have been brought up out of the limelight that he said before that contradicts what happened on Sunday night. We've heard that too. So all that's happened now. And so what happens next? I mean, we can't just go ahead and I can't just keep taking the whole thing about what was said. Everybody's talked about that. I'm not going to take any more about what happened that night. We're going to focus on the aftermath. What actually has gone on since this happened. Well, the Academy, Motion Picture Academy, has now made comments on this. They're going to take several weeks about what happened to investigate. In a letter to members, President David Rubin, CEO Dawn Hudson said they were, quote, upset and outraged that the Oscar celebration was overshadowed by Will Smith when he slapped presenter Chris Rock. Who's going to want to do that presenting job now? So they were outraged that the behavior of Will Smith overshadowed the Oscar celebration. The board will make a decision on appropriate consequences for the actor. A formal review initiated after the officers' board of governors convened for an emergency call about the King Richard actor. They'll explore whether any further action is required. Well, we already know that no criminal charges or any kind of charges are going to be made. Chris Rock has declined. He's not going to press charges. You know what, too? Something else coming out today, that the producer of the Academy Awards spoke with Good Morning America today and said that the LA Police Department was prepared to arrest Will Smith citing battery. And so he heard that they're saying, this is battery was the word they used in that moment. We will go get him. We are prepared. We are prepared to get him right now. You could press charges. We could arrest him. And that was being said to Chris Rock. He continued. They were laying out the options as they were talking, and Chris was very dismissive. He said, I know I'm fine. He was like, no. Even to the point where I said, Rock, let him finish. He didn't want to do anything. And he was absolutely right. I don't think we didn't have to go that far. Listen, yes, you could have said that the action could have been criminal. Yes, absolutely. Jim Carrey said he would have filed a $200 million lawsuit. So yes, it was absolutely. But, Chris Rock, I mean, he's a gentleman, man. He's a pretty respectable figure, man. Let me tell you, he's a class act. He didn't do anything. He was just saying, no, it's okay. It's okay. Hey, I did it. And, he took the hit. Took it like a man. I mean, it sucks. None of this should have happened. So the Academy stated that disciplinary proceedings against Smith have begun, and that can either lead to a suspension, expulsion, or other sanctions permitted by the bylaws and standards of conduct. Now, there were reports that the Academy had said that Smith was asked to leave the show, but he was not formally asked. Will Smith, in an Instagram post, said that his actions were, quote unquote, unacceptable and inexcusable. And Chris Rock was on a stand-up comedy tour on Wednesday in Boston. He began his show saying he's still kind of processing what happened. The interview with T.J. Holmes, talking to Will Packer, that comes up Friday on Good Morning America. So as soon as you catch this episode, you will probably have seen the interview or seen clips of it. Now, in the acceptance speech, he did apologize to the Academy and fellow nominees, in his emotional acceptance speech did not mention Rock. And one person that actually spoke really well on the controversy was exactly where I feel about things. Sid Ganis, former Academy president, he said that it's not the board's place to sanction Smith. I think he's absolutely right. He said, quote, I think those are two men who had a real disagreement, and it's up to them, not to the Academy, not to any of us. I think security should have escorted him out immediately instead of letting him sit there spewing unacceptable language at Chris Rock. Someone else should have accepted his award. Why did he get a pass? I don't know if you could have gotten him. I don't know if you could have done that. If you could have had somebody else accept the award, that's tough. And late night TV talked about it. Stars, everyone from Mia Farrow to Jim Carrey to Rob Reiner, all condemned Will Smith's behavior. So now we're going to ask ourselves, what about the career that Will Smith had prior to all this, right? I mean, the relationship that him and Chris Rock already had. There was quite a bit. So NME.com actually put up a great story and referred to all the things they worked on together. So Will Smith was less than 20 minutes away from collecting his first Academy Award when he stormed the stage. 20 minutes! And he couldn't have kept himself together long enough just to go ahead and do that. He couldn't have just take it outside. Couldn't have done that either. Their relationship spans 3 decades and stretches back past 1997, the year that Smith and Pinkett were married, and G.I. Jane, which was the action drama featuring Demi Moore, shaven head and all, which Rock referred to in his joke, was released. So, in the final season of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Chris Rock played a doubleheader in the episode of the famous comedian Maurice Perry and Perry's sister Jasmine. 1987, Jada Pinkett appeared on The Chris Rock Show. 1999, both Rock and Smith appeared in Torrance Rises, a mockumentary co-directed by Spike Jonze. The short film followed the Californian dance troupe made in Jones's video for Fatboy Slim's Praise You, where he's also one of the dancers, and their trip to the MTV Video Music Awards in New York. 2005, Will Smith approached Chris Rock on the set of a award show, The atmosphere was much more congenial, and Rock and what a coincidence, Jada Pinkett Smith were handing out the award for favorite voice from an animated movie at the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards because they worked together on the movie Madagascar. There you go. Rock played Marty the Zebra. Pinkett Smith played Gloria the Hippo. And one of the first of the animated Madagascar films. Then Chris Rock appeared on the David Letterman show to promote his Broadway debut in The Motherfucker with a Hat, and Smith was targeting some of the teasing. And Rock discussed his own kids and wanting a child who can sing. And he said, quote, "That Will Smith messed it up for everybody. Kids singing and dancing. The guy's already taking parts from me. Now his kids are taking parts from my kids. Will Smith, don't you have enough? Damn you, Will Smith." Jokes. And as we mentioned earlier, in the Oscars 2016, he made a joke and said, he made jokes on both of them because he didn't show up for the Oscars because of the black representation issue. Okay, justified. But they're still going to be up for criticism because they're going to get roasted. They're just too big to not get roasted. And there used to be a time where you had the celebrity roasts, the Friars Club and all this, were major stars. Oh, man, Frank Sinatra used to let himself get roasted. Orson Welles, like all these major stars. Jimmy Stewart, they all got themselves roasted. They all could take a joke. And the jokes that Chris Rock made this night, pretty funny. He said, quote, "Jada boycotting the Oscars is like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. I wasn't invited." And then he said, it took a swing at both Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith, suggesting she was annoyed her husband wasn't nominated for the sports drama Concussion. Quote, "It's not fair that Will was this good and didn't get nominated. You're right. It's also not fair that Will was paid $20 million for Wild Wild West." Ouch. It was pretty good. And then when Pinkett Smith heard about Rock's jokes nearly a week after the Oscars, she was asked, she said, quote, "It comes with the territory. We got to keep it moving. We got a lot of stuff we got to handle. A lot of stuff going on in our world right now. We got to keep it moving." So yeah, she just blew it off. All the way to today. And there's that. And then there's a thought, well, we're going to talk about the people that actually commented on this that also got caught up, namely Zoe Kravitz, of course, Catwoman of the Batman movie and all of that. But there was a story that came in from Deadline that was actually pretty interesting, really talking about the psychological aspect of this. And breaking news continues tonight because Will Smith spoke with the Oscar bosses today, and there's outrage among the board and others. We'll talk about that in a minute. So there were thoughts on the Oscars' toxic masculinity admitting wrong for appeasing Will Smith's assault on Chris Rock. Joe Atici and Mike Fleming Jr. both commented on this, and they said, first of all, Mike Fleming said they wanted to go back and compare their feelings after they live blogged the Academy Awards for Deadline.com. Mike Fleming said, "I'm ashamed of the position I took in respecting Will Smith for standing up for his wife when she was insulted by Chris Rock, because Jada Pinkett Smith has alopecia, and this is why she keeps her hair close cropped. The person I should have lauded was Rock, who clearly didn't know about the alopecia, and therefore in his mind delivered a silly, benign joke, had the discipline to keep his cool after being shockingly assaulted on stage. Smith blew what should have been the pinnacle of his inspiring career, and I blew it in. We're not recognizing the incalculable damage he did to his legacy and the Academy Awards. I think by not swiftly removing Smith from the premises and denying him the crowning moment of his acceptance speech of the Best Actor trophy, everyone knew he'd win. So the Academy leaders dropped the ball. They can hold as many emergency meetings as they like, and everybody can talk about healing and singing Kumbaya, but I don't know how they could possibly fix this. Make Smith give back a trophy he deserved? Force him to host next year's Oscars as penance? Bounce him from being a voting member of the Academy? It would have been a hard move for dumbfounded organizers to respond and remove Smith during the commercial break, but it was what was required. I don't know. That's a tough decision. Their issuance of a weak statement that the Academy doesn't condone such behavior was ridiculous. They did condone it by not escorting Smith out, and those who gave Smith a standing ovation when he won his Oscar after his disgraceful moment were as complicit as I was in describing it in the way that described the moment. And so they went through about 40 people before finally securing Wanda Sykes, Regina Hall, and Amy Schumer to host. And he says, I imagine it will be next to impossible to get someone good to take on such a thankless task like the next Oscars. And by the way, Chris Rock only came out for Best Documentary. I didn't realize it was just a presenter, not a host, just a presenter. And he took a little time to roast. That's it. And it was topical because he knew Will Smith was going to be nominated. That's why he said what he said. And he saw him in front. Joe Ticci comments and says, by physically assaulting Chris Rock, Will Smith took attention away from the many worthy winners of awards on Sunday night. Not least, Amir Questlove Thompson, whose documentary Summer of Soul won the award Rock was presenting, delivered a most poignant speech many will have missed as they struggled to work out what had just happened. So it is incumbent upon us, he says, to do what Smith and the Academy made very difficult, which is to return the spotlight to moments like that. But you don't want to parse this particular incident first, so let me get into it by saying this. Had Will Smith done everything he did on Sunday night except physically assault Rock, I think this conversation would be a lot different. If he'd got up from his chair, got right in Rock's face, and said what he had to say without slapping the guy, I think we're putting the focus on whether Rock's joke even orbited the planet of acceptableness. It didn't, he says, and it would be part of a wider conversation about the night, not the sole focus. What that means ultimately is that by hitting Rock, he actually diminished the potential power of a chivalrous vocal shutdown might have had. I still think he could have slapped him, and I think there would have been really no losing face at all from it. You could have just took it as something that was completely ambiguous at the most, and then people could have just said what was going on, and then the talk would have been, well, what was that all about? Was that a joke or not? And the truth is, if we had to feel like, well, Will Smith needed to get his frustration out, well, he did the slap, he walked back. People probably would have laughed. Well, no, they didn't laugh. They were shocked. But they moved along. Chris Rock made the joke after that, saying, hey, I just got knocked the shit out by Will Smith. Move along. And we could have probably kept the whole Best Documentary presentation done without much of an incident. But that's not what happened. They go along and they say now, the Academy's announcement that it will investigate is like a shamed #MeToo executive saying they're going to spend time looking deep inside themselves for their behavior. Nothing good will happen. The moment that called for decisive action has passed. His speech, correlating how he protected his family and took a page in how Richard Williams stood up for his family, is in hindsight foolish and becomes as shameful as an all-time Oscar low-light moment as a distracted tweet-happy PricewaterhouseCoopers accountant handed the wrong envelope to Warren Beatty and ruining that Oscar cast when La La Land was temporarily named Best Picture over Moonlight. I forgot about that for a little bit there. Whew. So they got more to say about it, and there's a lot to be said. They go into a lot of different things, and I'm not going to get into all that. It's just a lot. So the story about the Oscar bosses, let's get back to that. This happened tonight as I record. So an undisclosed short virtual meeting between Will Smith, David Rubin, and Don Hudson. The 6-minute Zoom call initiated by Will Smith to Rubin and Hudson mainly saw Smith apologize yet again for slapping Chris Rock during the telecast. But the new shockwave now is because the Academy's Board of Governors meeting yesterday, beginning the disciplinary procedures against Smith, weren't in the know. They didn't know they already talked to Will Smith. And the board's asking, why would they keep this from us? It only contributes to the atmosphere of suspicion and a lack of leadership. And there was more contradictory information about how Smith was allegedly asked to refuse to exit the Dolby Theater after striking Rock. The efforts by the nearly 50-member Board of Governors to find an appropriate solution to the situation by next April 18th scheduled meeting could be fracturing based on news of this virtual meeting. Quote, what else do we not know about what's happening about what happened on Sunday? This lack of transparency undermines our ability to come to a suitable resolution to the whole thing. So Hollywood's falling apart. The Academy has once again gotten tarnished again. So, do we really care about what they're doing now about what's happening here? More of the continuation of the same. More shame, more disappointment, more embarrassment to the Academy. And there's more to this. There is much more. Then you got Zoe Kravitz, who made comments about it. And she said, in a quote, "The show where we were apparently assaulting people on stage now." So let's see what she says, because people decided to go after her and try to cancel her. So in an update to her account, Instagram, she captioned a photo of herself in the pretty pink dress she wore to the ceremony with, quote, "Here's a picture of my dress at the show where we are apparently assaulting people on stage now," end quote. Then she followed up with an image of herself in a form-fitting floor-length white gown at the Vanity Fair Oscar party and a caption, "Here is a picture of my dress at the party after the award show, where we are apparently screaming profanities and assaulting people on stage now." And this caused a boatload of comments about what happened. A lot of commentary about Zoe Kravitz. Let's just say Twitter went awry because of her comments. And they started going after her because of comments she said about, what was it, Jaden Smith back in the day, years ago, and all this stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness, man. Canceling away. Just don't care. And then the comedians that would be defending Chris Rock, justifiably so, they started commenting about, what does this mean about comedy? Because comedians were rallying around Chris Rock, and they said, quote, we all have to worry. A concern about violence towards comics. Now we have this problem to come out of this. Howard Stern talked about this. Well, first of all, there's Mark Hamill, the Star Wars star. He said, quote, violent physical assault, not so much. That's what he thought about it. He drew the distinction between speech and action that many have continued to drive home as the comedy community rallies around Chris Rock. Howard Stern said on a SiriusXM show, and this is, by the way, on Tuesday morning as I record this. He said, quote, you don't hit people over speech, certainly not the Academy Awards, and Will Smith's got to contain himself. And he's absolutely right. Jim Carrey agreed. He told Gayle King on CBS Morning Show Tuesday, if you want to yell from the audience and show disapproval or say something on Twitter, that's okay. You do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words, end quote. And most comedians' reactions to the slap, you have more of them. There's, okay, Kathy Griffin was one of the first to speak out strongly, expressing a concern that many comedians echoed. Quote, let me tell you something, she tweeted. It's a very bad practice to walk up on stage and physically assault a comedian. Now we all have to worry about who wants to be the next Will Smith in comedy clubs and theaters. Rob Schneider, who's worked a long time with Chris Rock, he said, quote, there's never an excuse for violence, and he writes ever 10 times. Then you got comedian Hal Sparks saying that Smith's action, quote, might have, quote, greenlit a lot of violence towards comedians. And he also said, quote, somebody in Will Smith's circle needs to tell him there is no way what he did tonight won't result in a comedian somewhere getting beat up or killed. He greenlit a lot of violence. Patton Oswalt, he would say, quote, he was very nervous for his shows at the Irvine Improv tomorrow and Tuesday. Anyone have a catcher's mask I can borrow? Judd Apatow had the strongest reaction. He said, quote, he could have killed him. That's pure out of control rage and violence. He lost his mind. And then he continued to talk on the SiriusXM's The Dean Obadala Show to set air tonight, or this was on Tuesday, so it would have already happened. Quote, well, you're somebody that people emulate, so it's dangerous. You can't have the Sidney Poitiers of the world behave that way. And quote, so hopefully whatever that was, and maybe we don't even know all the levels of it or the backstory of it, and hopefully everybody figures it out. And hopefully it becomes a teachable moment where Will Smith can speak to people in an honest way about why that was not the way to go. And he also said that he hoped, quote, we will hear a very clear expression of why that was a terrible, embarrassing, and dangerous mistake from Smith. I'm hopeful that will happen. I'd be very surprised if it didn't, because basically, if that's the way it is, what'll happen to Ricky Gervais on the next Golden Globes? There's more. Rosie O'Donnell said the incident was, quote, so upsetting on every level. Bravo to Chris Rock for not eviscerating Will Smith. which he could do any day of the week, he walked away. Bravo from a sad display of toxic masculinity from a narcissistic madman. Wow. Rosie not pulling punches. Adam Sandler, who's of course worked with Chris Rock for many years, longtime friends. He said, quote, when a promo photo came up for Rock's 2022 Ego Death World Tour, he wrote, quote, can't wait for this. Love you, buddy. Whoopi Goldberg was on The View on Tuesday, and she said, quote, I do think it's wonderful that Chris did not take it to that other place that he could have done. But then she also sought to explain Smith's mindset. Quote, I think it was a lot of stuff probably built up. And she nods toward the jokes that Will and Jada Pinkett-Smith has endured over the years, including some from Rock himself. Quote, I think Will overreacted. I think he had one of those moments where it was like, G did, just stop. I get it. Now, everybody acts the way we would like them to act under pressure, and he snapped. Next, quote, we're not going to take that Oscar from him, because I think she's one of the board of governors. Quote, there will be consequences, I'm sure, but I don't think that's what they're going to do, particularly because Chris said, listen, I'm not pressing any charges. Tiffany Haddish went on and talked, and she said, quote, Smith's leap onto the stage, quote, the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Quote, as a woman who has been unprotected, for someone to say, keep my wife's name out of your mouth, leave my wife alone, that's what your husband is supposed to do, right? Protect you. And that meant the world to me. And maybe the world might not like how it went down, but for me, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, because it made me believe that there are still men that love and care about their women and their wives. I'm not, listen, I get where the intent, but we have to judge the fact that, you know, Jada Pinkett-Smith is not without flaws. I mean, this is a relationship where she admittedly on a podcast said she had an affair with August Alsina, the R&B singer. Had an affair. Everybody knows about it. Pretty obvious. There's more in here. Jim Gaffigan, he says, okay, bad comparison on my part. I was trying to make a point, but it doesn't matter. Didn't think the joke was brilliant. I said Chris Rock's brilliant. I still do. We don't deserve his brilliance. Please continue to defend physical assault. It says so much. So he almost got criticized. Whitney Cummings writes and says, I mean, it's amazing that Twitter attacking communities for making jokes here about last night. Don't see that they're doing the same shit Will did last night. When people take jokes literally, society is just over. Absolutely correct, Whitney. George Walls. Will Smith is lucky his mama was in there last night. She would have kicked his ass for acting like that. Absolutely right. Pete Zedlacker says Will Smith laughs at the joke, laughed at it. Then in 3 seconds, he's so full of uncontrollable rage that he needs to protect his family, quote unquote. Entitled child man, Team Chris Rock always. The Lucas Brothers, damn comedy is literally under assault. Every community should post a Will Smith joke in solidarity with Chris Rock. I'm not, but every other community should. Chris Rock is a comedy icon who has told jokes at everyone's expense for 3+ decades. He's earned our respect. If he can get slapped and humiliated on national TV for telling a fairly mild joke, anyone can. You can protect black women and not condone violence against black men. It's not mutually exclusive. There you go. A lot of people are in the right of what they're saying. Listen, I'm glad that Chris Rock's getting the support. And I feel bad for Will Smith. Listen, I don't want to criticize the man. I like him as an actor. I like him as a singer and performer. He's given me a lot of entertainment for years. So I don't like to see him going down like this. This is not good. But the person I do hate that needs to take some, that has to take some blame. Listen, I feel bad for Jada Pinkett-Smith because she's dealing with something that really affects her in a great way. But because of the narcissism that, Rosie O'Donnell talked about, Rosie, the narcissism isn't coming from him. Well, they're both narcissistic, by the way, but Jada is very much the narcissist. She is the dominant in the family. Okay. Will Smith gave out feminine energy, which is toxic masculinity. Okay. That is toxic because that's not being a man. Now, of course, that's not the definition of toxic masculinity, but the way for me, that is somebody being supposed to be trying to acting masculine. That's toxic behavior right there. That right there, what he did, it's one thing if his wife was faithful to him and he was faithful as well. But also, it's a joke. We have to be able to take jokes. We have to be able to poke fun at each other. It's just not being allowed anymore. And the comedians are absolutely right. Because this new way society is right now, the softness of the society in general, being so sensitive and coddled for all their lives, and now they need to have this thought that, oh, if we hear something, we're going to just attack. Cancel culture all the way. So, are we going to get acceptable behavior? That comedians can get attacked on stage. They can be targets for violence. Could that be very well a thing? I wouldn't rule it out now. I don't think it's going to be so much of a problem. I don't think people are going to be that stupid. They could be. What if you have another thing where like a Michael Richards comes out and starts making comments like he did when he went on that racist diatribe? Or, Laura Lampanelli commenting about some heckler in the stands complaining to her. Right? I mean, what happens if those stars right there, they start doing something that's going to go ahead and cause an ire? Now there's a thought that, oh, the comedians are allowed to be punching bags. They're allowed to be targets. That's not fair to them. That's not fair to anybody. That shouldn't happen. We all need to do better with that. Now, we can talk about other things where Jada Pinkett-Smith talking about, I don't give two craps about what people say about this bald head of mine. I mean, she could not have said anything. She always had short hair in the first place. Only for certain times that she had longer hair. So, she did call for healing after what happened. Richard Williams spoke on Will Smith, saying that we don't condone anyone hitting anyone else, end quote. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar criticizing Will Smith for perpetuating stereotypes. I'm not going to read through all these stories. But what we want to do now is focus on both stars and what this means to them going forward. Because the trajectories of both of their careers is different forever. And that's what we have to talk about. So I made mention of that Will Smith actually did have life-changing psychedelic experiences in his new book. Why would he have to go through that? If there's not trauma that's going on in his home, his career, and he's feeling miserable, and he's struggling to keep it together. Well, a couple of stories talk about that. Because the Oscars, as a result, took a hit again. Can they recover? Variety.com writes about this. They mentioned that Will Smith hitting Chris Rock was far from the only controversy plaguing this year's Academy Awards. 10.5 million viewers, the lowest rated low-energy pandemic telecast from last year. And there was a make-or-break burden of the Oscars saving itself from permanent irrelevance. It's what led the Academy Board of Governors and telecast producers to tape acceptance speeches from 8 categories, which got everybody to talk about angry recriminations and outright protests. We talked about that in the program. Spider-Man No Way Home, the big billion-dollar blockbuster hit, only got one single nomination for visual effects. They introduced Twitter polls for most cheer-worthy moment and fan favorite of the year to spotlight popular cinema and bring everyday moviegoers into the Oscar process. Now, the Oscar viewership did go up to 16.6 million viewers, up 58%. But they're not getting 25 to 30 million viewers like they used to. The less than stellar results after weathering so much discord only opened the Oscars to more sniping from within the industry and without, quote, since it's a commercial for our business, essentially, I just don't know why everyone wants to go after it all the time, end quote. Quote, everybody's been practicing their Oscar speech in the bathroom mirror their whole lives, yet everyone also wants to just restore it. Does everyone just want them to die and we just have an 8-hour dinner that's not televised and everybody talks for as long as they want? What's the alternative? Film historian Mark Harris suggests hiring a producer with extensive experience in live television, handling the telecast over multiple years. Quote, if you try to reinvent the Oscars every single year, You create this narrative that it's constantly in a crisis of needing resolving. One of the reasons the Golden Globes rose so much in 20 to 25 years before they self-immolated was brand consistency. You know what a Golden Globes telecast vibe was going to be. The Oscars have no brand consistency now at all. When you're nominated for an Oscar, you're getting sewn into a timeline that's existed in 1927. I think of the show as a little less concerned with chasing relevance and a little more concerned with chasing importance in history and emotion. It might find those things a better fit for its natural assets. It's never going to be the youngest or most populous of movie award shows, but what it can be is the most distinguished, the most prestigious. It is still more meaningful to the people in the industry to win an Oscar than it is to win any other kind of award. Yep. Very well said. Mark Harris. Smart. Very smart. Variety put out a story about Chris Rock, and this is his defining moment. Slapgate, they're calling it. No doubt, Chris Rock is experiencing a wide range of emotions after such a dramatic incident, but the debacle is already paying dividends for him. So Wednesday night had a sold-out crowd in Boston with secondary ticket marketing place TickPick disclosing more tickets sold in the night before than all in the previous month. Ticket prices have also surged. It has also reinforced his brand as a no-holds-barred comic. Yeah, you want to just solidify his legacy, he just did that. It doesn't cement his cool guy bona fides, nothing will. So this Variety reporter talks about that. We want to hear what is on Chris Rock's mind right now. The last thing he should do is take his matter so seriously he would feel off brand for the funny man. Better to say what he says on stage, what he's calling his Ego Death World Tour, which would surely be rebranded. With all due respect to Rock, who has maintained a fairly unsullied image over the years, the veteran comedian like him can always use a little mid-career brand burnishing, bringing into sharp relief his core attributes, because after a long while, those attributes fade a bit in the public's estimation. Well, you know what? You have to think about what Dave Chappelle went through the last year, with all the comments that are being made to him. Listen, Chris Rock can't be this, controversial comedian like he was, because there's certain things he can't talk about now. We know comedy's been under fire. We knew about that for a long time. And this has been an issue that's been rampant. So I think Chris Rock not commenting so much on it, I think it's fine. I think he doesn't want to say anything. This writer predicts, he says, that Rock will not only bury the hatchet with Smith, but when the time is right, the two men will share a stage together in some form or another. So don't waste time feeling sorry for Rock. He's going to be just fine. And he's right. Chris Rock is going to get a buzz off of this inadvertently. So there you go. Good stuff. That's all I got to say about that. I don't think I'm going to say anything else more about it. That's it. A couple other stories I'm going to bring up. There was also about Bob Chapek, the second year at Disney as a CEO. And there's now a confidence crisis now. So corporate bullshit. I'll put this in there for people to go and look at. I want to take one story that's on radio that I thought was very put together, that was being brought up here, and I thought this would be good to go and bring up on the program after all the stuff I talk about with music. So this is from Sean Ross, RadioInside.com. He talked about hosted, produced radio. Adequate shorthand among many readers to his column. It's what podcasting's not. That's one thing to be thought about. He says, the radio I love sounds big, but those who've watched the industry for the last 25 years come honestly by their frustrations and their consolidation and its aftermath. So I can't call it big radio. But with each week I refocus on what makes radio great. I'm circling on the notion of showbiz radio. The thing done well by broadcast and satellite radio and not quite grasped by or not valued by purveyors of other types of audio. Quote, so he says, showbiz isn't all radio has to offer. In recent years, the industry has come to realize that full-service radio matters too, particularly when it can get listeners to join the conversation. But TV talk shows certainly are part of showbiz as well. Broadcasters have a complicated relationship with the showbiz aspect of radio. Late 70s, early 80s, many programs were shamed out of it by the rise of album rock and adult contemporary radio. Z100 and Scott Shannon brought it back. And then people meter measurement centered on hiatus again. But more music, less talk radio, and showbiz radio never had to be an either or thing. So sometimes our showbiz takes the form of pretending not to be showbiz, imaging and deliberately deadpan sound of 90s alternative radio, which also spread to top 40. Scott Shannon's Z100 owed a lot to the small town guy conquers a big city through sheer earnestness of Frank Capra. So personal people meter measurement steered broadcast radio away from both full service and showbiz aspects around the time that our tech rivals began to specialize in that sort of excitement. Pandora came in for more music, less talk. The Genome gave it still a showbiz aspect. Since then, the iPhone and smart speakers have been in the irresistible toys that radio can't match. Radio has sought showbiz primarily to the station's shows. They can only really take the stage again now. He talked about how that Clubhouse and AMP, the Amazon Live radio component, they fulfilled other needs. They certainly do offer the ability to join the conversation. Many competing audio offerings, including AMP, have ventured into showbiz in one key way, via celebrity content creators. And he feels like their movie stars have been cast in a Sundance indie distributed by a major studio's boutique imprint. So the idea is that personality driven, which is showbiz, is not happening anymore. That is the problem. And it's more about promotion or advertising than it is about the actual identity of the station. So when he talks about how one of the New York radio stations says, we're not broadcasting from the top of the Empire State Building. Instead, we are live, but not really, from the 1-800-GOT-PAIN studios. So where people are feeling they need to go with things right now, it's done. And it's a shame. So there you have it. That's the show for this week. I appreciate you all listening in. Another Broadcasters Podcast, as you always do. And I'd love to hear what you think about what I talked about tonight with Will Smith and Chris Rock. We went through it. We talked about it. And it's something that should have never happened. That's it. Thanks for listening in to another Broadcasters Podcast. Until next week, remember that content is king. And the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.